Good morning, good afternoon and good day, and welcome back to the Parc'd podcast by Parc'd. It is episode 10 today. We've got a lot to get through because we had a busy weekend in racing the weekend just gone. We had Formula E went to Shanghai for the first Chinese E-Prix since 2019. Formula 1, Formula 2 and Formula 3 all went to Monaco. The Indy 500 happened, and the MotoGPs, the Moto2s and Moto3 also happened. But as you can see, Naomi is not here, so there'll be no Motos today, I'm afraid. I think if we had the Motos as well, this would probably be like a 2-hour long conversation that we were having. And that just does not fit the vibe. And this is also our last Parc'd podcast until we're back from Le Mans, because as we go into June, a lot of the racing slows down for like a period of time. Obviously we've got Canada on the 9th, which is the weekend before, literally the day before we go to Le Mans. And then obviously no one races on Le Mans weekend because they know not to, have that level of disrespect to the 24 hours of Le Mans. The amount of series that would be out of drivers because they decided to race on the same weekend would be insane, because drivers pick the 24 hours of Le Mans over anything if they can. So June is just like, there's like a whole chunk where the only thing is Le Mans. So it's alright. We won't have a Parc'd podcast for a couple of weeks, I think. 3 weeks. I think it's when we're back from Le Mans. I think. I can't remember. I do have it up on my screen. Well, I can have it up on my screen. I'll tell you when it is. YouTube. 21st of June. So yes, the weekend after we're back. So, you want to start with F1, F2, F3, Formula E, IndyCar? What you want?
We'll start with FE, work our way up to the Triple Crown.
Yeah, I feel like FE works best going first anyway, because it happened first, technically, because the last race was at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. So, Formula E was an interesting one, as I said, back in China for the first time since 2019. But before 2019, Formula E debuted in China, so like the first season of Formula E ever, season 1, was held. We had a race held in China for the Beijing E-Prix.
Wait, yeah.
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 Maybe.
So, pretty sure.
We're going to say that.
It is the Beijing E-Prix. Yeah, I was correct. Season 1 held the Beijing E-Prix, and so did season 2, and then we didn't have anything until season 5 for the Sanya E-Prix, which was in 2019. And now we are at season 10, and we are back in China for the Shanghai E-Prix. And I don't think personally it was one to disappoint. It definitely shook up the championship a little bit. And has definitely made that battle a little bit more interesting. Not that it wasn't interesting to begin with, but it's definitely made it a bit more interesting. And we had some different people, some different faces on the podium for the first time in season 10. So race 1, we had a double jag podium again. They are doing an incredible job in this constructors championship, or the team's championship at the moment. They are on 299 points after this weekend, ahead of Porsche, who are on 226. So that double podium finish was definitely a great one for Porsche. For Jaguar. It's because I was then looking at Pascal Wehrlein, who obviously finished P2. He was the one that split the Jaguars. Yeah. Everything was still definitely to play for on Saturday with that one. With Mitch Evans finishing P1, Nick Cassidy P3. That was, I don't know if either of you two actually watched the race or watched the race back. Nick Cassidy wasn't a very happy bunny by the end of the race. He had at a lot of points a 2% battery, like an 2% energy. What's the word? Advantage. Yeah. A 2% advantage going into like the last 2 laps. And they were like, just hold.
Um,
So
yeah, I wasn't happy.
he was for about 3 or 4 laps on the radio asking his team to reply to him. They did just tell him to hold in the end. And he was just like, I just need to know if I'm holding or if I'm racing at this point, because we can get a 1-2 here. Just let me get ahead of Mitch and I can fight Pascal for the top spot. Mitch can get ahead of Pascal. We can get a 1-2. They're like, just hold. He's like, I have all this energy. Please let me go. And they were like, just hold. But it was 2 places on the podium for Jaguar. Porsche's Pascal Wehrlein finished P2, and Antonio Felix da Costa ended up finishing outside of the points by the end of Saturday. Well, by Sunday morning, I should say, because it took the FIA 10 hours, give or take, to come up with the final classifications for that race. He got I believe it was a 5-second time penalty, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was 5 seconds. Didn't he send Jean-Eric Verne off track?
Yeah, in the last corner.
Because he originally finished P5. Sent Jeb off and got a penalty for it, so he dropped down to 18th. But when they all crossed the checkered flag, it was a decent point haul for Porsche and a decent point haul for Jaguar. And then after, obviously, the disappointment of ending up in 18th, Porsche were obviously going to do their best in the Sunday to get the double points that they wanted again. And that didn't go to plan once again. But luckily for them, the Jaguars didn't have that fantastic of a Sunday either. Because
wasn't too bad. Well,
it wasn't awful, but it definitely wasn't what they were wanting. Nick Cassidy finished P4, Mitch Evans finished P5. With the P3 and a P4, Nick Cassidy does still lead the championship. He's on 167 points. Pascal Wehrlein found himself in a little bit of trouble with Sam Bird on his return. So Sam Bird returned to Formula E this weekend. His weekend wasn't the best. Wasn't really great at all. He finished P17 in race 1 and retired from race 2. But it is good to see him back nonetheless. And
absolutely,
it wasn't the worst weekend in the world for McLaren, so that's a positive. But after Pascal Wehrlein's minor collision with Sam Bird, where he received a puncture and had to go to the pits, he finished P20. So Porsche left with their drivers taking away a decent point haul with one driver and then no points with the other, as Antonio Felix da Costa did go on to win round 12 of the Shanghai E-Prix. He started 3rd, I believe.
Yes, 3rd.
Because Jake Hughes was on pole. It was his 2nd pole position, technically 3rd pole position. But he got disqualified from one of them earlier on in the year of the season. And he was starting on pole position, which is a fantastic feat for McLaren, who have been not one to remember in the past few weeks. Jake Hughes, prior to Shanghai, finished P16 in Monaco, P15 and P12 in Berlin, and then race 1 in Shanghai was P16. So pole position was definitely what they needed. And they were showing pace. This is the thing, it's across the weekend, the McLarens were showing a lot of pace. And if it wasn't for Maxi Gunther deciding to use Jake Hughes as his weapon in the destruction of Eduardo Mortara, then Jake Hughes probably would have had a little bit of probably at least a point score. But yes, Maxi Gunther decided to spin out Jake Hughes into the path of Edo Mortara and wipe Edo Mortara out of the race, and subsequently send Jake Hughes down the standings.
Oopsies.
But Jake Hughes did have a great redemption Sunday, as he did finish P2, and that's his first ever podium in Formula E. And it's a P2.
So
it was so close to being a P1. But it was very, very good to see him on the podium. Obviously his first of the season because it's his first ever. And there was another driver who stepped onto the podium for the first time in season 10, and that was Norman Nato, who took P3. He had a phenomenal little drive. The strategy was working for him. He was leading the race quite consistently for a lot of the time. It was a lot of back and forth between the top, I was going to say the top four, but Stoffel van Dorn actually finished P6 in the end, but he was leading for a lot of it. He had a great weekend.
Yeah.
It just went downhill in the last probably quarter of the race. And the Jaguars just had the better strategy over Stoffel van Dorn. So, there is one other driver I think we need to discuss from Shanghai. Nick de Vries. If you've been following Formula E, you know Mahindra have been below the below average for the beginning of the season. They didn't score their first points until race 1 in Berlin, and well, not even race 1, qualifying in Berlin on the first day, the Saturday, when Edo Mortara took pole. But before that, they'd had multiple retirements, they'd had disqualifications, and just a lot of no-point finishes. So getting the points in Berlin were definitely, you know, a show that they were on the up, with Edo Mortara then finishing P8 in the race, and then they went back to a no-points finish on the Sunday. So coming into Shanghai, you had Nick de Vries score his first points for Mahindra on the Saturday. He finished P7. And it was like, Mahindra finally kind of getting their groove back a bit. You know, we're starting to get somewhere. It's really, really good to see. Because before that, they were the only team without points before Berlin. So, and then we went into the qualifying on Sunday, and Nick de Vries made it into the duels, and everyone's like, oh my god, Mahindra, what have you done to the car?
Hello.
And then it was kind of like, oh well, he's up against some really, really strong cars in the qualifying. So, you know, is he gonna realistically make it through, especially when he stepped up against, I believe it was Oliver Rowland he was up against first. And if you don't know, Oliver Rowland is a mastermind behind bloody podiums at this point. And he's a pretty good qualifier. So, but Nick de Vries managed to outqualify him and go up into the semi-finals, and we had the most emotional semi-finals I've ever witnessed in my entire life. It was Stoffel van Dorn versus Nick de Vries.
Oh, what?
My Mercedes EQ voice.
Yes.
If you don't know, I've been a long-term Mercedes EQ girl. I was since Mercedes EQ joined, and I was a long-term Mercedes EQ girl. It was very disheartening when they decided to just leave. So for them two to go head-to-head, Nick de Vries lost out in the semi-finals against Stoffel van Dorn. That was the biggest margin in the whole of qualifying, was between Stoff and Nick. It was 0.2, I believe. I think below that it was just a couple of drivers had like 0.1. Most of them were in the hundredths, some were in the thousandths. The final pole between JQs and Stoffel van Dorn, it was 1,000th of a second.
Holy shit.
Between the two, but it was JQs that took the pole. But the most, literally, when I woke up and saw this, I tell you, I sobbed when I saw that Stoff and Nick went head to head. At the end of it, obviously they came onto the radio to Nick and was like, oh, you know, I'm so, like, we're so proud of you, so happy for you, blah, blah, blah. And he just goes, that was well-deserved stuff.
Oh.
I was like, it's too early in the morning for this. At this point, I was up in the morning ready to watch Formula 3, because that was at 7 a.m. And the thought of then just having to sit and hear that before the race, I was like, oh no. Yeah, Formula E was a very interesting one. All the championship contenders, you've got a few. Jake Dennis had 1 point scoring in P5 on Saturday, and then out of the points on Sunday with P11. John-Eric Verne is now in the 100 points club as he hits 101 points. which now means the top 6 are all in 100 points. P7 is currently held by Antonio Felix da Costa, who is on 84 points. At this point, he's out of the championship battle. But obviously, he will be competing for the team's championship. But the only reason I say is that the points battle is because Nick Cassidy's on 167.
Mm-hmm.
And unless Nick Cassidy loses every single race for the next 4 races, and Antonio wins and gets pole in every single race, I don't think that he's going to, do it. But technically, statistically, you could still win the championship if you want, the statistics there. He would just need a lot of hopes and prayers to get it. And I don't see Jaguar backing out anytime soon. So, the championship is completely all to play for. Definitely between the top 4. Why have I gone out of focus then? What did I do? I don't know. Nick Cassidy, Pascal Wehrlein, Mitch Evans and Oliver Rowland, I'd say, is probably your best bet for the championship battle. Obviously, Jake Dennis can still get it. He's on 113 points. Realistically, Jean-Eric Verne could probably still get it somehow. Who do you think's going to win the championship? With 4 races left to go.
It's difficult. I think Nick Cassidy has been very, very strong overall over the whole season with Jaguar. So I think it would be very deserved for him to win. But then Pascal Wehrlein has been incredible as well. So I don't know who I'm hoping for, because I think it would be great for both of them. Well, to see the top 6, I think it would be great for anyone. Oliver Rowland would be insane. If he comes back, those last 4 rounds and wins, I think that would be very, very cool. But yeah, I think Nick Cassidy won't back down. I think he'll keep the lead.
Yeah.
Until the end.
I think it's going to be one of the 2 Jaguars that wins the championship. I think Jaguar are very, very strong.
Absolutely.
This season.
I just don't want to have to witness what will happen if Nick Cassidy doesn't win the championship.
Oh yeah, true. To be very true.
From last year, I just don't want it.
Well, it doesn't have Sebastian Buemi by his side this year, so I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
No, it's
being on the track.
it's got half the rest of the group.
He can bunch up everyone if he wants to.
The way Sebastian Buemi took out his own teammate when he was fighting for the championship, just to be spiteful. I can never get over that.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
We do actually have a month's break before Formula E returns.
So,
well, as we are talking about this now, we had less than a month, but that's not the point. From the end of the last race, we had a month. It's not back until the 25th.
is that Portland, right?
It is Portland, because we only have two locations left.
Yeah.
And we're at the season finale.
Last weekend of June, 29th, 30th.
So it is exactly a month then until the next one. All to play for, I'd say, in Portland. Definitely all to play for.
Yeah, Portland could be like a make or break for the top 4.
It's definitely going to come down to London.
Yeah, 100%.
The championship battle will. I'm just praying we get no cringe songs this year in London during the championship battle.
Lines on fire. All the things are terrifying.
Where lights on fire.
Oh,
yeah, that was interesting.
As long as we don't have that this year, I'm fine. I'm very fine. Just don't want that. Starting off the Triple Crown, we went to Monaco for Formula 1, but also Formula 2 and Formula 3. And obviously, as you know, Monaco is notorious for not being able to overtake. So 9 times out of 10, if you're on pole, you win in the race. And that's exactly what Nikola Tesla was hoping for during the sprint race in Monaco, as he was on reverse pole position. He'd only had 1 points finish for the entirety of the year so far, and that was the first race of the year in Bahrain, where he finished P4, and then apart from that, nothing else. Yeah, Nikola Tesla stepped to the top spot after taking the reverse grid pole. He was joined up there by Tim Tramnitz, who seemingly only seems to at this point score points when he's on a podium. He scored P5 in Bahrain sprint race, right? And then 3rd place in the feature race there. Out of the points in Melbourne. P2 again in Imola. And then out of the points again. And then P2 again in Monaco.
Interesting.
But I do love Tim Tramnitz. I think he is a great little racer. He was also very lovely when I met him in Berlin. Because he was there for the rookie test on the Monday. And joining them both on the podium was Laurens van Hulpen. I'm hoping that was pronounced correctly.
Yeah, I got that.
You didn't sound confident about that.
Van
Hulpen. Laurens van Hulpen. That was his 3rd podium as well of the season. The Formula 3 really messes with my head because you would think the drivers with like 3-4 podiums would be like fighting for championships. Laurens van Hulpen is currently P10 in the standings on 30 points.
That's crazy. I feel like he's so much higher up.
Gabriel Mini is currently leading the championship on 72 points. So
God.
he's a solid 42 points ahead.
That's crazy.
And it genuinely just comes down to consistency. He's only been out of the points for one race, and that was the sprint race at Monaco. And also him scoring his podiums in the feature races as opposed to the sprint races, because obviously there is a point differential there. But actually talking about Gabriel Mini, he started on pole position in Monaco for the feature race. And for his 2nd year running, he won in Monaco during the feature race. So it's a P1, which really helped to send him up and above Leonardo Fornaroli in the championship standings. Because going into Monaco, Fornaroli was in fact leading. He now sits in 3rd after getting P9 and P5 across the weekend. Also on the podium was Christian Mansell in P2, which I feel like he really needed that after Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Him on Saturday on the grid after the race when he was coming out and congratulating his teammates.
Yeah.
It made my heart.
The Christian Mansell is quite the icon on Saturday. I did thoroughly enjoy watching him stand on the sidelines laughing at his own car. If you don't know, I've got to remember exactly how this happened. I'm going off of memory here, and if you know, my memory's pretty bad. There was, I want to say it was Arvid and Christian were coming round. Somehow both hit the wall and then took each other out. And then from behind, I want to say, who was it? Was it Alex Dunn?
Think so.
Alex Dunn's car went straight into the back of Christian Mansell's and fused itself in there.
In there.
In there.
There.
This is Christian Mansell's car. His went like this, and the marshals could not retrieve the car from inside the car. It was there. It was stuck there. There was no separating it. And in the process of that, 2 other cars got collected in it as collateral. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. Kean Shields was definitely one of them.
Hang on. I can see it.
Was Josh Dufek one of them? Because I know Sophia Flörsch and Casper Suzuka retired.
Mansell,
yeah, got that one.
Christian Mansell, Arvid Lindblad, Joshua Dufek, Alex Dunn, and Kean Shields.
Oh, I was correct. Hell yeah. My memory's doing me better than I thought. Yeah, because Casper Suzuka and Sophia Flörsch both retired from the race as well. After a little collision there went on.
A little incident.
A small little incident. But it was a very chaotic opening lap for the sprint race with that little pile up. It was thoroughly enjoyable to watch them try to move two conjoined cars off the track because they would not unfuse.
Nope.
Not at all. But apart from that, it was pretty calm for a Formula 3 race.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just went round and round and round and round. Nikola Tesla still on the podium. First Bulgarian driver to win in F3.
I think it's on an F1 weekend full stop.
Yeah.
So it's like F3, F2, F1.
And then... Did you say Fracker?
I said fair play.
I was going to say, I was like, since Fracker was that on F1 weekend? I was like, hello? Did I miss something? Yeah, and then the feature race was reasonably boring, apart from some people getting a bit fighty, but Formula 3 drivers fighty all the bloody time. Fighty is definitely the, correct words to be using for that. Fighty. Yeah. I think it was just a relatively boring weekend across F3, F2 and F1. It's Monaco.
Yeah,
there's not much you can do. If we head into F2, if I can even find F2, there we go. F2 had a beautiful sprint race. Actually, it was quite the concern when the qualifying results came out because there was a lot of impeding in qualifying.
Yeah.
A lot of impeding. To the point that they were waiting to see who was going to be penalised for that. But at the end of qualifying, before any penalties, Taylor Barnard was on provisional pole for the sprint race because of the reverse grid, which is definitely something he needed because he had been on no point finishes the whole time. The AIX is not the strongest car. It's not very speedy, very fast. It's, it's just how it's just, yeah. So he really needed this starting on pole. He drove a very, very clean, flawless race. He did have Gabriele Bortoleto challenging him the entire race without fail. No breaks, nothing. He was chasing him down step by step.
Oh, absolutely.
And Taylor Barnard was actually able to drive the car home to win the race. That was his first win in Formula 2. And it must be quite nice having your first win in Monaco.
Iconic.
It's a pretty simple win, permitting you don't have any problems, I would say. As long as you're starting towards the front, you're reasonably alright. So he was able to hold it off and take the win home. Obviously, Gabriele Bortoleto finished P2 just behind him, and Dennis Hauger joined them on the podium in P3. There was only a couple retirements. Well, there was 4 retirements, but Zane Maloney being one of them. He's had a very difficult weekend. He was leading the championship, I believe, heading into Monaco, if I remember correctly. And just like Leonardo Fornaroli in F3, he's now dropped down to P3 in the championship battle. As the driver that brought it home in P3 in the feature race, none other than Paul Aaron, currently tops the championship standings.
Crazy.
He is a rookie in Formula 2. He was dropped by the Mercedes Academy literally just before this race season and is now currently leading the Formula 2 championship. He's currently still doesn't have a win. I'm very, very excited for the day we do get a Paul Aaron win, but he has consistently been on the podium. He's got 5 podiums so far this season. And then 4 further point finishes and only 1 finish outside of the points. Isaac Kajar is just behind him on 2 points, 2 points behind. He's on 78 and Paul is on 80. But Isaac Kajar did have a very miserable Sunday. He finished P2.
Not unhappy, man.
Finished P2 in the feature race. Would you think anyone else would be happy to finish P2 in the feature race at Monaco? No. Zach O'Sullivan went on to win the race. Going into the last few laps, Zach O'Sullivan still had not done his mandatory pit stop. because they have mandatory pit stops in the feature race in Formula 2.
Yeah, by this point, Hatcher was been leading, like dominating this race.
Yep. And Zach O'Sullivan managed to go into the pit lane 4 seconds before they waved for the safety car to come out. He was 4 seconds off of being disqualified from the race.
Yep.
And because he managed to go into the pit lane before they waved for the safety car, he was able to get a decent pit stop and come out ahead of Isaac Kajar, who was obviously waiting for Zach O'Sullivan to pit to get ahead of him so he could win the race. And it just so happened that the timing of the safety car meant that Zach O'Sullivan was able to get out ahead of Isaac Kajar. And if you don't know, in Formula 2, it's actually against the rules to pit under a safety car. Unlike F1, where if there's a safety car comes out, they all go straight to the pits and, you know, do their pit stops then. You can't in F2. You're not allowed to pit under safety car, which is why that he had that 4-second window where he could have been disqualified if he'd have gone to the pits any later. But insane strategy call there somehow for Zach O'Sullivan to win the race.
Insane.
But Isaac Kajar did finish P2. I was pretty upset because Oliver Behrman did actually finish P4. And if, obviously, Zach O'Sullivan had pitted without the assistance of the safety car there, Ollie Behrman would have been up onto the podium and, you know, he'd finally be able to kind of shut the people up who are constantly saying stuff. Like, it's non-stop for the poor bloke right now. You know, doing all this F1 stuff, and they're like, yeah, but he's doing terrible in F2. Like, no, the Prema is just doing really, really bad in F2 right now, and I don't know why.
It's not because of him, but because of team and faults and cars and just...
Yeah. It's... Yeah.
He's trying.
He's doing his best.
Yeah.
Richard Fisher was actually the driver on pole position. He retired. I actually didn't see how he retired because I had to leave my house to go to London.
I think it was an engine failure of some sort, some mechanical. He was not happy. He threw his steering wheel out of his car while still driving in the pit lane. Like, he drove into the pit lane to, like, retire the car, and before the car came to a stop, he just threw his steering wheel out. He's not very happy. Yeah. I don't know if he got fined for that or anything. I
don't think so. I didn't see anything.
But...
Yeah, I feel like that should be a fine.
But he was not happy.
Great results to a boring weekend. Hell yeah. But look, don't get me wrong. I like the Monaco circuit, okay? But I don't like Monaco. I find it very boring. But I like the circuit, and I feel like I'd thoroughly enjoy it if I was there. I feel like the vibes are immaculate. But...
Racing?
The racing...
Non-existent.
Yeah. For the first time in F1 history, the top 10, where they qualified, finished in exactly the same position.
Yay! Excitement.
How does that occur? Okay. There is one exciting thing to come out at the end of this weekend, though. So with Max Verstappen finishing P6, and Charles Leclerc winning his first ever home race, Charles Leclerc is on 138 points in the championship, and Max Verstappen is on 169.
Yes.
The gap is closing. The gap is closing.
Coming from him.
If you'd have said sort of like 4 races ago, bear in mind we were sat and he had sort of like a 3-race like advantage. If you'd have said 4 races ago, oh yeah, by the way, like he only has really like 1 race now, like advantage, I would have been like, ha ha ha.
Honestly, when they
Pardon?
said, I think I heard it in a press conference or something, that the gap was that small. I was like, what? Have I been watching a different season than everyone else? It's like, how is that possible?
Because obviously Max Verstappen retired in Australia and then didn't win in Miami and finished P6 in Monaco.
Yeah. funny.
Now a 31-point difference between the top two.
Lighting.
Lando Norris is currently up to P3 in the championship standings. He's on 113 points.
See, that's not even too big of a gap.
No.
Like, it's crazy.
You've got Carlos Sainz Jr. in P4. He's on 108 points. After he was reinstated back into the race.
Yep. Very interesting red flag rules here.
I'm taking the fact that Marshall did not touch his car.
I hope not.
Because if Marshall's touched his car, he would not have been allowed back in the race.
Yeah.
Because that's why George couldn't continue driving in Silverstone after he stopped his car to go check on Joe. Was because Marshall's touched his car.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they didn't, and that's why he was able to continue and for some reason be reinstated back into P3 instead of the back of the grid where he was when the red flag was flown.
I think that's a stupid rule.
Yeah. I think everyone needs to look at their rules a little bit there.
Honestly.
He DNF'd on his own accord there and was somehow put back into P3. Lando Norris finished behind him obviously in P4. Oscar Piastri is currently in P6 on 71 points. He got his first podium of the season. Finished P2 just behind his father, Charles Leclerc.
Oh god.
George Russell finished P5. Lewis Hamilton took the fastest lap, P7. The Mercedes are both on 54 and 42 points. It's been definitely a season to forget for them. They have been very, very consistent. They normally finish anywhere between P5 to P9, collectively between the two of them for the whole season. So they've been consistently in the same places. Not the greatest amount of consistency, but consistency. Obviously, Sergio Perez, who sits in P5, retired from the race. From a very interesting incident. If you watched the Monaco watch-along vlog, you'll see mine and Kelsey's reaction to that incident. And you'll literally see us trying to figure out what happened. We stopped filming before they fully showed exactly what happened, so we were going off of one angle. We pretty much figured out exactly what it was, to be fair. We just assumed that Perez caused it on his own, but actually, no, the Haas somehow spun him round. How the two Haasers that started in the pit lane were that close to Sergio Perez, I have no clue.
Well, because when the crash happened, the first thing I said was, did Perez start in the pit lane? I was like, surely...
Did they start in the pit lane, though? Because I thought when we were watching it, they lined up on the back of the grid.
Yeah, someone told me, like, no, they weren't in the pit lane.
In the pit
and I was
lane.
like, they got disqualified.
Yeah, they got disqualified and were meant to start in the pit lane.
I think they asked for permission to start on the grid, and the FIA granted them permission to start on the grid.
Honestly, I don't know
what's going on in the world
when we
of
were
F1.
watching it, they rounded the back, and I was like, "Whose rear wing's that?" Oh, it's the Haas's. And then they lined up because they were taking so long to come out of the final corner.
Very
bending the rules
bizarre.
or some.
Yeah. One Haas tagged the back of Perez, spun Perez into the Haas driver's teammate, and completely crunched Perez's car to almost nothing. And Perez just walked out of it completely unharmed.
It was insane. When they showed like the above angle of it, the first thing they showed, I was like, is that a car on the left? It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I feel like I would have been even more unnerved if the first thing, like, we saw Perez get out the car and put his wheel back in before we saw what had happened to the car, how it happened or anything like that. So it's a case of, well, we know he's fine. So whatever it is, it can't be that bad. And then they showed it was like, okay, no, that is bad. How have you walked out of there completely fine? That's terrifying. And it just shows these cars are built pretty good. $2 to $3 million worth of damage there. Apparently Adrian Newey did say though that this kind of collision is really going to be a massive step back for Red Bull coming up. So we might see the closing of Ferrari and McLaren to Red Bull this season a bit stronger. Alex Albon took his first points of the season, finished P9. For some reason, mentally, I did not know that was his first points.
First?
His first points of the season.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Somewhere in the back of my head is telling me that he got points. It was probably in... No, he hasn't got any points. Because he's on 2 points.
Crazy.
That's mental. Yeah, because it's just now. Kick Sauber. Couldn't think of the bloody name for a second. It's now just Kick Sauber without any points for the team.
Right.
Yeah. That's wild. Why did I think he had points?
I thought he had points.
15th, 11th, 11th retirement. 12th, 18th retirement, 9th. Indeed, I'm very confused. What?
What?
Yeah, I think that's everything in F1. Nothing else important happened. Drivers crashed out.
Really?
No,
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Oh, we had an Alpine fight.
Yeah, oh yeah, the Alpines attacked each other.
Esteban went flying.
Esteban Ocon decided to go up the inside of Pierre Gasly.
The Alpines didn't attack each other. One of them decided that he was going to ignore direct team orders of get round the laps cleanly and decide, no, you know what?
Yeah, Esteban Ocon went up the inside of Pierre Gasly, expecting Pierre Gasly to just somehow create an extra bit of space on the track for him to go into. There wasn't the wall. And then Esteban Ocon mounted the front of Pierre Gasly's car and went flying. And proceeded to DNF from the race after that. That was also in the first lap, same lap as the Wham collision.
And now, because of that, there is speculation that he may not be in Canada.
I heard that.
Which people have been saying, like, Esteban Ocon's their best point scorer for the season, always, finishes the best, blah, 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 which statistically he has been doing better than Pierre Gasly this season, statistically. Why would they bench him when he's doing better than Pierre Gasly? But Esteban Ocon quite literally decided to go against team orders, not listen to his team, deliberately do something that knew he was going to get in trouble for, and still did it anyway, and then retired the car in the process of doing it all. It's not as if he just did it and retired the car and, that was it. Like, he physically went against team orders and screwed over the race for not only him, but the team.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, he wouldn't be in their best books right now. And it would make sense, that Alpine wouldn't be happy. Like, I'd get it. I would be a little bit like, why are they doing that if, he just made a simple mistake? But it wasn't just a simple mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the only argument Pierre Gasly got into in Monaco, though. He then went and had a little battle with Esteban Ocon's best mate, Lance Stroll. Both made it out alive and well. Lance Stroll ended up finishing P14, so don't think there's anything else we need to talk about there.
No, I just know that when we watched it, I just remember the absolutely sickening feeling I had, and it was like, oh, Esteban Ocon's behind Pierre Gasly, great. Race restart, now Lance Stroll is behind Pierre Gasly. I didn't have a moment of calmness the first lap or the restarted lap, because I was scared for my life.
The fact you haven't mentioned anything to do with Pierre Gasly in the points is very concerning.
I was waiting. I was letting you do your thing.
No, I was going to move on to IndyCar.
I had a weekend. I had the best weekend of my life. Bloody best weekend. So, just as a little thingy, touring cars. I love my touring cars, right? I had an awful weekend in Berlin when I'm sat in the hotel and Alice goes, Oh, by the way, Jake Hill crashed at Druids, which Druids is my favorite corner at Brands Hatch, and I was like, haha, funny joke, and she was like, no, I'm being serious. I was like, funny joke, stop winding me up. No, he did. So this weekend, Alice is looking at her phone, and I've gone, oh, can you just see what the touring car results are? And I was like, she was like, oh yeah, sure, okay. Next, starts laughing. And I'm like, oh, just put me out of my misery. Go and tell me, like, did he crash? She's like, no, he won. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then she's looking through again and she goes, hang on a second. That was around 8. Like, this says round 7 he won. And I was like, he won too. This man. So touring cars have 3 races over the weekend. So they have, in the end, they have 30 races over the championship. He won 2 out of 3 this weekend, so I was on cloud 9. Cloud 9, baby.
I just remember showing Katie the second one, and she going, "Yeah, I know you showed me that." I said, "No, this one says round 7," and she was like, "Yeah, you showed me round 7 earlier." I said, "No, I showed you round 8. I don't know what the rounds are called." And she went, "Huh? Sorry."
Round 2. But yeah, so I had Pierre points and Jake Hill 2 wins out of 3.
Yeah, the problem with that is Jake Hill's now P3 in the championship, or P4 in the championship standings, on joint with P3 after his 2 wins. Which means I am that little bit closer to having to spend money. So, yeah.
It's alright, I'll bottle it on the last race of the season.
I need Tingram to really get it for me. I love Tom Ingram is now my fave, okay? It's okay. Right. As we said, Triple Crown, Monaco. What else is a part of the Triple Crown apart from the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is not next weekend after?
It's the Indy 500.
It is. You watched the Indy 500, didn't you?
I did watch the Indy 500.
I didn't, because I had a worm headache and I went home and I curled up into bed and went to sleep.
Fair enough. No, we've had a good Indy 500. It was very chaotic. We had a lot of cautions. Route cautions, which was, I think, the main point of this Indy 500. Which at one point kind of annoyed me a bit, because you want to get into the racing and, like, see the tactics worked out. But it was a lot of cautions. The first one was Tom Blom crashing out, taking Marcus Ericsson with him, which was unfortunate for Marcus Ericsson, but anyways. But overall, it was a typical 500 where you didn't know who was going to win it until literally the last corner of the race. If you say winners and losers, I would say 2 losers. Scott McLaughlin, who obviously started on pole, had the fastest average speed ever in an Indianapolis pole. And with every restart that we had in that race, he was on top of it. He took over the lead, he was back there, and it was really sad to not see him win. But talking about sadness and not seeing someone win, I think Pato Award, he was heartbroken after that race. The last couple of, I would say 30, 50 laps, he was leading the Indy 500, he was doing really well, he was controlling sort of the race, to then for Joseph Newgarden to overtake him in the last corner. So heartbreaking for Pato Award. But Joseph Newgarden won the Indy 500 back-to-back, which is an insane statistic there. He won an extra, I think it was like $400,000, I'm guessing. Because every year they put in prize money in this pot for someone who wins it back-to-back, and it hasn't been won for over, I think it was like 39 years. So he got $500,000 extra prize cash just for winning it back-to-back, which was insane. Yeah, very Joseph Newgarden-like. He climbed out of the car, celebrated with, the fans in the grandstands, which was really awesome to see. But yeah, overall it was a good Indy 500. A lot happened, wasn't predictable. I didn't know who was going to win until, the last few laps. I thought Pato was going to win, but then Joseph overtook him in the last corner, which is crazy. I think Callum Island had a very good recovery drive after not starting the warm-up laps because there was something wrong with his car, and then coming in after one, with the first caution, coming in again, being in the pit for a long time, but he finished 11, which was really good. really good recovery. And Cal Larson, obviously, is some name that has been mentioned a lot because he wanted to do the double. He is a NASCAR driver and he wanted to do a NASCAR race after the Indy 500, but because of a rain delay in the Indy 500, obviously that started very late and he wasn't gonna get to Bristol in time to do the NASCAR race. He tried, but then when he got to the NASCAR track and got in his suit, got his helmet and everything on, that race was cancelled because of the rain delay. So he never got to race in the NASCAR. He never got to do the double, even though he tried his very best. So that was sad for him.
I was wondering why, because like I saw him post this massive thing on Twitter, basically apologising to everybody, and obviously Zach Brown had replied to it saying you don't need to apologise at all. You know, the double's coming your way, and I was like thinking, oh shit, did he not do the double just because of like the delay or something? But the fact that the NASCAR round was cancelled as well.
Yeah, because he knew he wasn't going to start a race. Like, when the Indy 500 was delayed by like a few hours, he knew I'm not going to make the start of the race. So they had a replacement for him in the NASCAR race, but he was convinced he could fly out after the IndyCar race, take over that car, and at least finish it. So he at least done sort of the double. But then because the rain also hit at the NASCAR track in Bristol, he couldn't do the 600, which was really... It was sad, but I think he's had an incredible weekend in Indy. He finished 18th, which, you know, isn't anything special, but doing an IndyCar race as a NASCAR driver, I think it's always cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a very good Indy 500. Very good Indy 500.
There are IndyCars back this weekend as well, isn't it?
They are. They are back.
Detroit.
Detroit.
They've got like 3 back-to-back weekends now.
Yeah, once the Indy is on, it's like go, 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 go.
I spent a good 10 minutes when I was doing the like the results graphic for IndyCar. I spent a good 10 minutes working out why it was the 6th round and why it was the 5th round and not the 6th round, because I forget that the money one doesn't count. Like it's just like an extra one, and I'm like, I put it in that graphic. Like, guys, you're messing with my head.
What's happening?
So I'm sitting there and I'm going, no, I could have sworn there was a conversation. No, oh, I don't know. I edited it 4 times, changing which round it was 4 times before I went, do you know what, I'm just going to post it and then deal with the consequences later.
Yeah, fair enough.
Luckily, I did it right, but...
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, Alex Blue is still leading the championship in IndyCar. Scott Dixon 2nd, Will Power 3rd. Pato O'War still 4th. You probably wonder where's Joseph Newgarden. But yeah, he got his points taken away from the first round and all that controversy, so he is still 7th in the championship, but it's all to play for in that championship.
Tom Blom IndyCar news.
I don't know what's happening there. I don't know what's happening with Myers Rank, honestly.
Apparently Tom Blom is out for the next 2 races and has been replaced by Helio?
Yeah. Helio Castroneves is driving that car.
They said it was a mutual agreement, and I was like, oh, maybe he's now filling in for someone in Le Mans, but nothing on there. None of the drivers in Le Mans have said they're going to be out, have said they're injured, like nothing's openly happened, like...
Yeah, no, I have no clue what and why. Like, other than him crashing out in the Indy 500, which can happen to anyone, I think he's been doing really good in the IndyCar season, so I don't see a reason to, like, get him out based on performance, so I don't know why...
That's the way they're like, well, don't worry, he's only out for 2 races and then he'll be back, but, like, why?
Yeah.
Like,
I have no clue.
So, yeah, that was a bit odd. Everything else is slowing down in terms of racing for June, as we said earlier. Except IndyCar, apparently. Obviously, they're off for a week for Le Mans. Everyone is off for Le Mans.
Yeah, Le Mans is a bank holiday race.
Yeah, the bank holiday week. No racing, guys. Everyone's at Le Mans or watching Le Mans.
Yeah.
No F1 this weekend, no F2 or F3 for a good few weeks either, until I want to say Barcelona. Perhaps
F2 and F3 is Barcelona.
F1 Academy is
Barcelona as well.
Yeah,
because it's F1, F2,
Barcelona
F3,
has
F1 Academy.
all 4 Yeah.
I cannot do that article by myself, please.
Don't worry, we'll do a separate one for F1 Academy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so obviously they're not back until Barcelona. F1 are not back this weekend, they're back next weekend for Canada. Obviously, WEC returns technically next Thursday, technically.
Yeah, for test.
Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday, Thursday. They start like.
How about it doing the qualifying this year?
The qualifying's Wednesday and Thursday. Okay.
Okay.
But I mean the week before that, like next
Yeah, they
Wednesday,
do like the
Thursday.
testing day, don't they?
Yeah,
Oh,
they all
yeah.
have to complete the mandatory testing before the end of Sunday or something like that, so they can actually compete in Le Mans. But I'm pretty sure that starts from like the Wednesday or something. So there's that. But that starts next week, same weekend as F1. MotoGP is back this weekend. It was on the weekend just gone. It's back this weekend as well. And then in terms of everything else, Formula E is obviously not back to the end of June, like we said earlier. So we've got a very calm... Well, we don't have a very calm month, but the racing drivers have a very calm month. We have a lot of content coming out in June once we're back.
24 hours in 2 weeks, I'm not having a calm one.
Yeah. We've got lots to do. There's lots coming to the channel. If there's anything as well, by the way, any of you guys want to see us film together, we might film a video in Le Mans together, because when it comes to Le Mans, there's off days. Like, you literally, apart from if you're like taking the support series out of the equation here, Tuesday is literally just driver meet and greet, and that's it. Like pit lane walk. Wednesday is qualifying one. Well, the first set of qualifying. That's not until like 7 p.m. at night. Thursday is hyperpole. That's not until like 8 p.m. at night. Friday, driver parade. There's no cars on track really, apart from a couple of practices. And then obviously Saturday, Sunday's the race. So you've got like in the daytime not a lot going on. So apart from the support series and whatnot, but we might film a video, we might not. You'll find out in due course, I guess. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Parc'd podcast. Like we said earlier, there's not going to be another one of these for a couple of weeks. You will have videos still though. We've got a packing video coming. So if you're going to Le Mans or planning on going to Le Mans, that should be somewhat helpful for you guys. And we also have another vlog coming. It will be the wonderful Celeste, who is vlogging for us this weekend. This weekend?
Yeah, leaving tomorrow. I haven't packed yet.
Oh, all done. That's really smart of you.
Yep.
So that's all to come to cover us across Le Mans week, and then obviously once we're back from Le Mans, there'll be lots and lots of vlogs coming from that. So keep an eye out for that, and obviously we'll be back with the Parc'd podcast in a few. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you follow all of our social medias. They're at @parkfem_. That is on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. We will have lots of content coming. We mainly use Instagram and TikTok. We do need to get on the Twitter grind a bit more. We're not very good at that bit, but you know, we're working on things. We're like, we obviously started Parc'd FM in 2022. It's nearly our 2-year anniversary.
Crazy.
And we took the first year to kind of learn and figure out what direction we want to go into. And we've kind of started to finally figure out the direction and the niche and everything like that we want to do and how we want to construct things. And we've taken a second year just learning and trialing a bunch of different things. So we're starting to finally get into the rhythm of that, which is pretty good. So we're getting somewhere, and we're just, you know, keep an eye out on all the social medias, because so many different things are coming and we can't wait to share everything with you guys from this year. Make sure you go check out our website as well. It's parkfem.co.uk, and on there we just post a bunch of articles. A Formula E one's just gone out. Katie's getting a Monaco recap coming out as well soon, so they're all to play for. And yeah, we will see you guys soon. Ciao bella.
Ciao, bella.